What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to another episode of Resurrect, and in today's video what we're doing is we're taking our wrecked M3 that we want to repair and we're removing all of the parts, all of the damaged parts on the car until we get to an undamaged state. So that's what we're doing today. And what we're going to be doing is first we're going to be doing a little bit of bending, then we're going to be doing some cutting, and then we're going to be prepping parts for installation. So we'll see some of that in the video today, but what I wanted to do is show you some of the tools that I use in the video so you can kind of see what they are and what we're doing and understand a little bit more about what's going on. Now in the beginning of the video you're going to be seeing me use this right here. This is an AccuLevel digital gauge, and what this does, this allows me to check the camber and caster of the wheels to see if they are, how far they are out of spec to what the manufacturer says they should be, and that will help me get an idea of how the frame has moved at all, if any, and what kind of pulls we'll need to do to get that alignment back into spec if it is out. Now during the bending phase of the car repair, we'll be using a lot of different tools. We'll be using a Porta-Power, which is a very inexpensive type of tool that you can get at Harbor Freight or online. I got mine on Amazon. It's a 10-ton Porta-Power setup, probably under $200. But this is a very great tool. This is something you will need when bending frames. This tool though, I will have to say, duckbill spreaders on a Porta-Power are terrible. They're pretty much useless. So you're gonna need something a little bit more hardcore. This is a pro level tool. This is an Enerpack duckbill spreader, but this does not work with a Porta-Power system. This works with an air pump, like the one that I have on my frame machine. And this one has at least twice as much power or more than the one on the Porta-Power setup. And this one is excellent. So I highly recommend something like this when you're repairing frame rails, because the metal is very hard and it's difficult to work with sometimes. Another item that works very well on frame rails, and this does work with the Porta-Power setup, is this rail saver. And this thing I've overused. This thing is epically awesome. It's come to the point where I probably need to rebuild it because it does leak a little bit. But what it does is it allows me to slide this into the frame rail, and if it's caved in on one side or the other, I can use my Porta-Power and just push that out gently to get that frame rail nice and straight. So there really is nothing else like this that I've seen on the market. This is a fantastic tool. I want to say they run about $150 or 200 bucks, but I really don't know how you would accomplish frame rail repair without something like this. So definitely well worth it. Cutting. I'll show you some of the tools here. Obviously just a regular hacksaw, Milwaukee hacksaw. This is a great tool. Grinding, you're going to be using an angle grinder to grind and cut. And we're also going to be using this. This is a new tool, and this is well worth the money. This is a cutoff tool by Milwaukee 12 volt. This will give you some really good, precise little cuts. And I want to say these are about 100 bucks. I got this thing open box for like 60 bucks. This is so worth it, guys. So another thing that we'll be doing is removing spot welds. When you're working on a unibody or frame, you got to remove those spot welds and drill them out. You could use a regular drill bit, but you don't want to drill all the way through. So what I use here is this Rotabroach sheet metal hole cutting kit. I picked this up on Amazon for about $50 or $60. It comes with a bunch of different sizes. However, the one blade that I'm constantly using is the 5/16 size. So you may, if you buy something like this, just stock up on 5/16 hole cutting blades. But this is a really great little tool, and I've used this very often on many different projects. And then lastly, when we're prepping parts, new parts to put on to the frame or unibody, or we're taking older parts and sectioning them in, we're going to want to make new spot welds or rosette welds with the MIG welder. And so we're going to have to drill holes in those metal pieces that we're putting onto the car. So drilling holes in metal is time consuming. So what you need is something like a hole punch, and that's what this is. This is a pneumatic hole punch made by Onyx. I got this on Amazon as well. I think they run about 100 bucks as well. But this thing is very fast when you're trying to make a lot of holes and you're trying to prep that part, and it does cut through through a decent thickness of metal as well. Pretty much anything on a unibody, it will be able to get through. Sometimes you just have to pull that trigger a few extra times, but this is a very handy tool as well. So these are some of the tools we'll be using on this video, so let's get right into the work and get started. And we're off. So we have the AccuLevel digital gauge on the wheel to check the camber and caster. On this particular vehicle, the camber and caster were actually within spec, so that's great news. That means the frame didn't move very much. Now we're just removing the hood so we can easily access everything around the engine, and as well as the fenders and all the bolts that hold the fenders in position. And now we're getting it on the lift, getting it up in the air so we can easily access underneath the car, get the wheels off so we can get the fender liners out, and the fenders as well. The fender liners hide a lot of the hardware for that. And then we had to remove the reservoir for the windshield washer. So just disconnecting some of the plumbing here as well as the electrical connectors. And once we remove that, we can get to the 2 or 3 bolts right behind it to remove this passenger side fender. And it's a good idea to get all these fenders off. We want to take a good look at them and see what kind of condition they're in, as well as the frame behind it. Now just removing the other side fender liner. There you go. Everything on these cars, it just comes right off. Everything just falls off in an M3, so that's great. That works out. So we're just pulling off this other fender as well to get a good look at that. And then on the front of the vehicle, there was a lot of damaged parts. Some of the pulleys were damaged, some of the hoses were damaged. So we're just getting an assessment, making a list of what we need. Unfortunately, I sold the engine to a really interested buyer very quickly, and I accidentally gave away some of the damaged parts. So I did have to order a few parts. That was kind of a waste, but you know, sometimes it happens like that. But when you have a buyer, you have a buyer, and you just got to go with it sometimes. And then now just removing some of the underbody panels and some of the front hoses that were damaged that go to the oil coolers, engine oil cooler, as well as the transmission oil cooler. Now we're getting the frame straightener set up. As you can see, we're moving it underneath the vehicle, and now it's in position. You can see it on the wheel stands, getting everything in position, the clamps onto the pinch welds. And there it is, it's in position. We made sure and we'll make sure to take a impact wrench and just really tighten down those clamps so that car does not move, and set up the pulling tower in the right position to pull our frame. And now we've got everything set up on the passenger side frame rail. You can see it's bent, and what we're going to do here is we're going to push and pull at the same time. So we're pushing with the porta power against the other frame rail, and we're pulling on the pulling tower to give us a nice even pull, straighten that right out. And then on the other side, we are pushing against the back of the wheel wall there, and we're pushing kind of forward on that frame rail because it's kind of crunched in. You can see that dent right there. It indicates it's kind of pushed in. So we'll push that straight out and then pull towards the passenger side to get all of that as straight as possible. And the reason why we want to get everything straight before we cut is because if we don't do this and we just cut it, the new parts will not align right. So that's why we have to straighten everything out first. And the reason why we have to cut everything and replace it instead of just straightening it out is because if you look at that metal right here, there's a crease in it. And anytime you have a crease in your metal on the unibody or the frame, it's a good idea to replace that part. If we didn't replace that part, it's possible that if the vehicle got in an accident again, the metal would tear at that point. So here we are using the rail saver to bend the frame rail, and now we're just moving. We need to get that AC compressor out. It is totally blocking the passenger side frame rail, so we have to remove the reservoir for the coolant and a few of the pipes that are in the way, and there you go.
That's how you remove an AC compressor. You just tug on it. So it's out, and now we're using the rail saver again to just push out some of the dented areas in the frame rail. And this works really well. And we're just going to try to even that metal out. Here we're using another fitting on the porta-power as well. You're going to have to use a combination of fittings on that porta-power as well as the duckbill spreaders and the rail saver. Here we're using just like a C-clamp to push in the metal as well. So we're pushing and pulling. We don't have a lot of space here to use a hammer. So using these clamps and hydraulic tools works best. And now we're just taking that front bumper reinforcement and just checking for fitment.
All right guys, so there you have it. What we've done thus far is we've gotten everything kind of straight and ready for the next video, in which we'll be cutting off those damaged sections of the frame rail and prepping our new or donor pieces and attaching them to this frame. And we're gonna try to make that as seamless as possible, or make that look as seamless as possible. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I don't know if you realize how much it helps when you hit that like and subscribe button, but every time you do that, all of the money from your bank account gets transferred into my bank account, and I get access to all the webcams in your home. So guys, please hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching.